Good evening to one and all present here. From a WordPress blog in 2008 to revolutionizing the journalism industry and the entertainment arena today, Malini Agarwal's journey is truly inspiring. Her company, Miss Malini, alone receives a traffic of more than 4 million unique visitors a month, with revenues in excess of $1 billion. A stalwart in the field of journalism and entrepreneurship, the expertise of Malini Agarwal in her domain is unparalleled. We hope that all the viewers will have a lot to learn and can incorporate some of her strategies and lessons to pave their own unconventional path to success.
So with your permission, ma'am, we would like to begin this session of eTalk as a part of eSummit 2021.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Of course, ma'am. So for the first question, we would like to ask you about your journey in the world of radio. According to what the reports say, your eventful and incredible career started off with your success in the same domain. So are there any particular things you learned in that journey that helped you along the way in the creation of Miss Malini and all of the endeavors that you are a part of today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love telling this story because I think it made a really big difference to who I am and actually even how I run the blog. Because on radio, you always think that you're broadcasting to such a huge amount of people, but actually everybody who's listening to the radio is having a very personal experience when they listen. So I always say this is that, 100 people could be listening, 1 million people could be listening, but each person has a very personal equation with their favorite radio jockey, which is why you think your favorite RJs are so good looking. And I remember taking that same ethos and thought process to the blog and saying, I'm not going to write the blog the way that you generally write entertainment content, more of a listing or from a third person perspective. I decided to write it in first person as letters to you, as if, as I would normally be writing or telling a story to a friend with just a little more enthusiasm than normal. And I think that was really the core of it. And that's where Miss Malini got its original voice. And I think that's really the transition that was made. So I think that was the biggest, most important thing I learned in my career at radio.
That was an incredible take, ma'am. We're pretty sure that's what sets you apart from the rest.
So the next question being directed at you is that you started your blog in 2008. Back when an integration of lifestyle articles and good old-fashioned and lucrative celebrity news was almost unheard of. What has the journey been like, considering that you were the one who started the page 3 age?
Well, I think page 3 always sort of existed, but I think that the digital version of it was probably a little bit different. I think that what ended up happening was, like I said, there was a lot of data dump of content, and especially when you think of celebrity content, it's all very gossipy or fashion police and who's dating who or who's doing something bad. And I always wanted to sort of celebrate content. So I think what happened is that I found that entertainment content generally tends to be kind of gossipy and fashion policey. And while page 3 existed, I didn't think there was a happy, shiny version of it. So for me, it was really about celebrating entertainment and celebrating our favorite stars. And so for us, if you look at now the content that people love about creators and celebrities, it's really the inside peek, the relatability, the fun and games, which I don't think people usually were covering when it came to entertainment journalism. And I think that we're really happy that we kind of kicked off doing that and people responded to it well. So I think the journey was quite interesting because I always tell people this, nobody really understood what blogging was when I started. So they didn't really take it seriously. Even the industry didn't take it seriously. Even people who were reading it probably didn't take it seriously until an audience was built up. And now you see how part of every film's promotional campaign includes digital. So many movies are actually being released on OTT platforms today. So it took a while to get there, but I'm really happy to see that it did grow to where it has become.
Of course, ma'am. A follow-up to the same question, as you mentioned, the OTT platforms and the entire mode of the entertainment industry is changing today from just having mainstream cinema to where it has come today. How did Miss Malini adapt to the same?
Sorry, say that again?
Since you started in 2008, the way that the entertainment industry was run back then and the way it is now is very different. So how did Miss Malini adapt to the same changes?
I mean, I think for us, we didn't have to do as much adapting because we were part of where it was going. I think that we actually did it in reverse. So we started off as a digital company and then we ended up making 5 seasons of television because traditional television was looking for content that people are consuming online. And I think we've always done that evolution. So if you see now a lot of Bollywood movies, you'll see Miss Malini as their digital partner. So we've actually kind of very proudly been ahead of the curve and made those changes. I think the one thing that we've done to stay sort of upbeat and abreast of what's happening is really to adopt new platforms. I think the big mistake people make is, and anyone here who's watching and wants to be a creator, don't limit yourself to one platform. You never know, they could come and go. We've seen it happen to certain platforms already. So think of the content you create and use multiple platforms. So you'll find us on Snap and Instagram and literally everywhere, creating content for those platforms organically and natively for each one of those. So I think that was the key for us. Adapting is really, you never know tomorrow what's going to happen. I think podcasting is becoming such a big thing. The next thing is going to be augmented reality. I'm sure you guys know better than I do all the things that, there are careers out there that don't yet exist. So it's really important to keep your sort of eyes in the future.
Of course, ma'am. Talking about one of your other successful ventures, let's talk about Girl Tribe. So what were your driving thoughts when you created this company, and how did it come into existence?
I feel that, and I think all the girls watching especially, and I'm sure all the guys know girls who have this experience, is that pretty much for every girl on social media, there's some guy talking to himself in her DMs. And it's, a joke half the time, but it's also quite serious at other times. And I think it just prevents people, aside from the trolling or sexual harassment, it prevents people from having a comfortable social media experience. And the whole purpose of social media, and I'm literally writing my second book about this topic, was supposed to be for you to be able to amplify your ability to connect with people on a scale that's not otherwise humanly possible. Like, look at us right now. We're sitting in all parts of the country, even the world in some cases, and we're able to connect like this. But if somebody just jumped into this chat and started yelling at us or flashing us or abusing us, it would ruin the whole experience. But somehow on social media, we allow people to behave this way unchecked. We would never let them walk down the street dropping their pants or doing the things they do. But we don't have any kind of virtual police. And as a result, you don't have a safe space for women, especially. So I created Girl Tribe as a community for women with 100 girls in a Facebook group. And then I saw the need was so large that there are over 70,000 women now from all over the world. And so we launched the app recently, which I think a lot of your students are now on, Girl Tribe by Miss Malini. And it's just so nice to see two things. One, you're not worried that if you post something, somebody's going to jump down your throat and attack you. You don't have to worry about being judged. And the other thing that I think that affects both men and women is this social media addiction that's become, how many likes and followers do I have? And we all face it. Even as creators myself, I wake up sometimes and say, oh, damn, why didn't this post do well? But what has that turned us into? We only look at the number. You don't realize that for every one of those numbers of your likes or followers, there's a human being behind that. But we don't think about that. We think we want more. And there's never enough. I can have 1 million followers, I'll want 10 million. I can have 10 million, I'll want 100 million. So I wanted to take that concept out. So there's no likes, no followers in the app. It's all about positivity. So you actually earn points for what you give. So if you start a good conversation, if you give someone good advice, you earn positivity points that you can then redeem in the store for actual products, experiences, and services. So it's kind of empowering people to say that, you know what, you will get as much as you give, because the hardest part of social media today is that it's not you, it's the algorithm. You can work day and night as hard as you do on your content, and you may not still get the views. And it's exhausting. So how about we switch that and make a new version of social media that isn't about that? So I think that was the premise.
So much for your answer, Malini Agarwal. I hope more and more women can find a safe space within that particular app. The next question being directed at you is that when it comes to the app market, its competitive nature is evident. And establishing a business there with a special clause in terms of making an account in the same is not a decision many would take. Why did you take that approach? And is there any particular outcome you'd expect out of it?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think the big thing with apps is, how much real estate do people have on their phones and what are they going to use it for? If you look at your phone, yes, you have all the usual social media apps. Then you probably have Uber, Zomato, Swiggy, some of the things that you can't live without. So for us, it was really two things. One, how do we create a platform for women that they can't live without, which becomes a combination of literally your virtual best friend that you can go into this app and ask anyone for anything at any time, get access to experiences that you could not even buy, and have sort of a wholesome, your BFF into infinity experience where you are never alone. And today, if you look at how we live in the pandemic, so many people live completely alone and they don't have anywhere to go. And if I were to go to Google and say, okay, hey, I need some help with something, or if I were to go to post this on Instagram, I may or may not get a very genuine, heartfelt response, but I will in the tribe. And I think this is something that's super important at this time. And the other thing, when you think about numerically, statistically, how to, make things work, one, in this case, we control the algorithm, so I don't have to hide things from you or each other unless you pay me. So I'm not doing any of that. And I also can promise a community that's already quite alive and kicking because of the 70,000 women in the Facebook community. So when you join an app, you don't come in blind, you don't come in empty. There's already something happening. So the way I describe it is, if you look at going to a party, normally if you would go to a party, you go to Facebook, for example, or you go to Instagram, you don't know anyone. You kind of passively stand in a corner and look and watch what other people are doing. Here, you're invited by somebody. So you almost are just like when you go to a party with a friend, you'll be much more comfortable. They'll introduce you around to people. So I always try to equate that. We forget that social media was meant to be a version of real life. We don't treat it that way. But if you think about how you behave in real life, and would you behave that way on social media, you really change how you think and behave.
That's an incredible take, ma'am. Our next question would be more of a general one. It was about women in business. So do you see a very stark difference in between a female-dominated support system in a corporate environment as compared to a male-dominated support system? And if so, why?
I think it's interesting. I get this question a lot, and people always ask me what it's like to be a woman entrepreneur. I mean, I don't know any different, right? I've never been a male entrepreneur, so I can't tell you that perspective. I can tell you what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And I can see what has happened and changed for women in the workplace and I think a great example is this show, The Bold Type. I'm sure everybody's been watching it on Netflix. Is that you are seeing a great deal of empathy and empowerment when it comes to women, and they are rising in the ranks, and they are doing a great job, and I think they bring a really high EQ to the corporate environment. I don't think that we should discount how well men do as well. I just think that having a good balance is amazing. Just like in your family, you need all of those things, right? If you have a brother or a sister, you have a sibling of the opposite sex, you find that balance, you get to understand each other better. And I think that makes a big difference. So I think there's a big change coming. I do feel, because my company is 90% women, that it does add a certain level of empathy, enthusiasm, even, that maybe guys find it a little harder to show, but it allows them to be that way because they're surrounded by women, so they're more comfortable talking about these things. I think that that's the case. I can't say for sure, but I feel it does make a difference.
I'm sure that must be an incredible driving source. We have a few questions from our audience and the people who have joined in today. So can we ask those?
Yeah, of course.
Right now. So the first question is from Divya Makhija. If you're here, we would request you to unmute and ask your question to Malini ma'am. I believe she may be having some internet issues, so I'll go ahead and ask a question for her. She has asked, what are the biggest drawbacks that you have faced during your journey, and what was your strength source throughout the same?
Like I said, I think the biggest drawback was that people didn't understand what I was doing. So I think that because I started out like in 2008 with a blog, it was very hard for people to take me seriously in my career, or consider it a career, for many years. So I actually worked in radio. I had a job at MTV. I was the channel head of Channel V's digital content head, all while I was doing my blog, which should have been legitimately a full-time career as an influencer already, but it wasn't recognized as that for a long time, So I've been doing this for about 15 years now. So everyone always says overnight success, but it takes a good decade for that to happen. So I think for me, that was the biggest struggle, people understanding what I do for a living, and appreciating that it can be a proper career. And then if you look at it from the business side, brands have really only now, really in the last 5 years, come really on board with spending large amounts of money online. In fact, a lot of their campaigns are purely digital. If you think about today, in things like the lockdown and pandemic, how many people are buying hoardings and billboards? How many people are even watching TV anymore? It's all OTT and on demand. And digital is where people live. You probably check your phone, I think, 9 to 12 times a day on average. And that's where you're getting all your information, your news, your advertising, everything. So we're really proud that we actually had to bang down a lot of brand campaign, advertiser doors to explain this to them. And then they sort of got on board with it. But it was a really exciting journey. It's also exciting to do something that hasn't been done before, because you can kind of make up the rules as you go along. But yeah, Divya, it was a lot of work, but I learned a lot.
Right, ma'am, of course. As for the next question, it's from a student of our college, Suraj Prasad. He has asked, if you had the chance to start your career all over again, what would you do differently?
Oh gosh, I don't know which part of my career I'd start differently. I've done a lot of different things. I was a backup dancer for Sukhbir for 6 years. I was in the radio business. I was in television. I think the only thing I would do differently is not wish time away. And it's not so much just in my career, but in life in general. I think all of us do this. You know, we're waiting for a weekend kab aayega, or when will my birthday come, or when will this pandemic be over? And we're wishing time away. And it's a mistake because you will never get this moment back. As cliche as it sounds, forever is made up from a series of nows. And I think that I had an amazing time building my career. I just wish I had enjoyed every moment of it when it was happening. I remember spending a lot of times waiting for the show to be over at 9 p.m. when I could leave the radio station, or waiting for something to come. And I recommend that to everyone. I urge everyone to step back and think about where they are. I got some amazing advice from Nirja Birla, actually. She said, when your mind wanders and you start thinking about other things, try to take your mind to where your hands are. So if your hands are on your laptop in front of you, be present in that moment. If your hands are eating or drinking something, be present in that moment. And it really works.
I think everyone is going to benefit from that advice greatly here, ma'am. Our next question is from a student named Ankit. So I would request him to please unmute and ask his question.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, Ankit.
Ma'am, my question is pertaining to the business model of the app. If we see the user base of the app, first of all, if we see the target audience, they are just females. So they are less in India. In our case, it is less than half the population. It is still a huge number, but I assume that most of them do not have access to the kind of facilities needed for the app. So how is it viable to have an app that only targets a very small number? Can that business be profitable? What is your take on that? How long does it take for the business to actually start earning money?
So it's a great question, Ankit. I think it's really about fulfilling a need. So whenever you start a business or any kind of product, you have to think about what is the gap you're filling. I'm sure you've watched a lot of Shark Tank and you'll see a lot of examples of that. I think for us, the clear need here is that there are a ton of social media platforms, but women especially are being underserved. So they're more likely to actually download an app where they're actually able to connect with other women, make real friendships, and have a good experience over an app where they are lost in the fray. A great example of this is Bumble, which lets women make the first move. So for us, it may not necessarily be about targeting every person on the planet. It's about getting a quality consumer who, yes, might be someone who has access to more things and a smartphone and stuff, but that also picks them people who with a higher spending power. So for me, the end game eventually would be to be able to do a product line, to do a lot of associations and alliances with other brands. And I think there's a large enough audience for that. I mean, if you think about, like you said, the numbers in India are staggering, right? I mean, our city alone is what, 22 million people. And at 30-40% of those are women, maybe more. Look at the next generation that's coming online. If you look at the pandemic, what they've done, we've been catapulted into the future. Even people who may not normally have gotten online, especially women, are online today. They're also shifting their entire business model to a virtual marketplace. So that's one of the things we do, is allow people to create virtual marketplaces within the app as well. So you'll see there's a lot of audience for these things. I think that the way that you have to look at it is find the need that you're trying to fulfill. What is it that you're doing differently, or what is it that you're doing better? And that's the right formula for a good business model.
To add on to that question, how important is content filtering in any app or any business model?
So that's a large piece for us. We actually monitor every single conversation that is started on the app. We check all the profiles to make sure they're legitimate, something that you don't see happening on other platforms. So you've seen a ton of these, social media platforms come and go. And a lot of times you'll just see good morning messages or memes or, random conversations, and it's not a very fulfilling or wholesome experience. So I think that's very important. Me as a content company, we're also able to marry our entire entertainment and content base into the app. So the barrier to entry is that, sure, anybody could maybe start an app, but they can't do what we do, as in give people the opportunity to actually have an experience that we can give them. For example, a yoga class with Malaika Arora, you couldn't even buy something like that. But because we have relationships through entertainment, we're able to create that experience for them as well. So I think it's really important to filter your content. I think it's very important to identify what content works for who. We all know there's way too much content out there now. Everybody's a content creator. So you have to think about your audience first always and create the content thinking about what they want in their lives.
But doesn't that affect freedom of speech if we are filtering all the content on a particular platform or internet?
So the way I look at it, it is not in terms of freedom of speech, it's more of the quality. So if somebody is spamming the feed, so we don't stop anyone from starting a particular conversation. But for example, I think a lot of students were also signing up from your college, right, Mal? But we had to make sure that they were real profiles. So we do a Truecaller check to see, is it a girl or a guy's profile? We have to check that the profile picture is correct, that it's a girl. When they start a conversation, if they're starting a conversation, even about a volatile topic, we encourage them to do it in a better way. So for example, if somebody started a topic and said, abortion is bad, it might trigger a lot of people. But if you start the same topic saying, here are my views on abortion, what do you think? You're more likely to have a proper discussion and a wholesome conversation, because nobody ever learns anything from anger. Nobody ever learns anything from that. I'm sure you remember there was this, I think it happened maybe last year, there was an auntie who said something really rude to a young girl because she was wearing a short skirt, saying that somebody will molest you. And that's why, and everybody flamed her online. Rightfully so, but do you think she learned anything from it? Probably not. So we actually started a conversation about how do you get through to someone who's so angry and upset about something that they don't react out of fear and say, okay, I'm sorry, because they're ashamed. How do you get them to understand what their actual mistake was? And this is the biggest problem online, is that we just say whatever we want, unfiltered, unfettered. But if you apply this to yourself, Ankit, even for yourself, think about everything you've ever written, commented, or said online. Would you say the same things to somebody's face? And if the answer is no, then you need to really check how you behave online. And I think it's a good thing to have a social media platform that encourages you to do that.
Just one last thing, ma'am. Is Girl Tribe a direct competitor in the female space, like Men's XP is in the male space?
Direct competitor with who?
Men's XP. It's a similar website. It is basically tailored towards men with like men-like issues.
Well, so first of all, no. So Men's XP, I think, is, yeah, for sure, male-related content in that sense. I'm creating a community here. I don't think Men's XP is a community of men. It's content aimed at men. This is a community for women where we actually offer a lot more than content. We encourage young businesses to flourish. We give them experiences in masterclasses, and it's much more than a digital magazine. So obviously, I think that there's a lot of people who might be doing similar things. I have a great deal of respect and admiration for other women-led businesses. I love what Shiro's does. I love what Bumble does, but I wouldn't consider them competition. I think that there's a huge thing to be said about collaboration over competition. The biggest mistake we all make is always looking at other people as competition and putting each other down, when you could actually really benefit from collaborating with each other and growing both your audiences. And the example I always give is that nobody just eats one meal for their entire life, right? So I am under no illusion that they're only ever going to come to my app or read my content. They're going to read my content one day, they'll go somewhere else the other day, they'll watch a different movie the other day. It's about creating a full life experience, a 360 experience for that audience that gives them the best out of their lives.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay.
Right. So we have another question from the crowd. I believe Aishiki is here. If you could just unmute yourself and ask the question. Aishiki, are you here?
Yes. I want to ask a question, ma'am, and that is, what is your advice to a complete beginner in the field of entrepreneurship? Like how to grow your startup and how to do personal branding of it. So that's my question, ma'am.
Super, Ashiki. Are you planning a startup?
Well, I'm just curious for now. Like, I just want to know. I'm just exploring, so I'm not very sure of it.
Sure. I think, well, good luck if you do. I think the most important thing, like I was telling Ankit as well, is think about what is the need you're fulfilling? What is the gap? What is the service or product that you're creating or providing that is unique? and what is the need it fulfills. I think that's the most important thing. And then, of course, there are a lot of things that you need to keep in mind, especially if you're looking at making this your full-time job and a long-term business. Investors specifically invest in people more than the business. If they believe in you as a person, you will get money and support for what you do. So always think about it from that perspective. Have a short-term goal, have long-term goals. For me, for example, I said, okay, I'm going to give this a year, see what happens, and then decide to continue or not pursue it. And then kept having shorter and long-term goals alongside with it. I think it's also really important to build a good team. One of the things I've learned is I'm not very process driven, but I've really learned the importance of that, because as your team grows and you have new people come in, not everyone will be able to read your mind or know your vision right off the bat. So it's important that you put some structure into place for that. And I think it's really important for you to also understand the numbers of the business. You know, a lot of times women think, okay, I don't understand the business end, I don't understand the numbers, somebody else will do that. Don't make that mistake. You should know your own numbers. You should know what's in the bank. You should know your worth. And it's really important to be able to hold your own in conversations.
Thank you, ma'am, for such valuable advice. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Right now, ma'am, we have one final question, and I think it's very fitting. Third-year student of NIT Durgapur has asked, ma'am, could you please give a message to the women who are out there in the country who are trying to become just as successful as you are?
Well, first of all, I just want to say I hope everyone's staying safe. I know it's crazy times with the pandemic right now. My advice to everyone is to just give yourself a pat on the back. You're doing amazing in some very unprecedented, unusual times. I would say, if anything, think about the things that you love to do. And today, in this day and age, you can actually make anything your career. You're not limited by time or space or any of those things. We hire people from all over the world. In fact, we're hiring girls at Girl Tribe. So if you're interested in joining us, just download the app and follow the instructions there. I really feel that it's time for you to stop wondering what if, or putting off the things that you want to do, that you've always wanted to try. If not now, then who? If not you, then who? And I think it's really, really important that you believe in yourself enough. I think there's always a voice in all of our heads, more for women than men, that tell us that we're not good enough, we don't look good enough, we're not good enough, as we're not as good looking as somebody else or as successful. But that, somebody gave me some great advice that said, think of that voice as a roommate that you live with. But when you leave the house, or you start a conversation, or you start working because you're sitting at home these days, disconnect yourself from that person. That's not you. That's just an annoying roommate you live with. And have the confidence and wear the confidence externally that you can do all the things that you want to do. And I've always struggled with that. I didn't have a lot of confidence growing up, and I always doubted myself. And I realized that was what was holding me back more than anything else. So, there's really nothing to lose. Find the dream and just pursue it.
With that incredibly inspiring message, we come to an end of this session with you. Ma'am, it was wonderful to have you here. A lot of the things you said inspired the entrepreneurs which are present in all of us. And specifically as a woman, I can say personally, it did inspire me a lot. So thank you so very much, ma'am, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. And we hope we can get to connect with you again. And for sure, Girl Tribe for all of the women who are present here and all of the women who are not exactly here. And we'll definitely be sharing the app and the community with all of them.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Sankal. Thank you, Sabantika. You guys have done an amazing job conducting this. You have a great deal of confidence and very finessed. And I really enjoyed that. And thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate your time. See you.
Bye.
Bye.